All right, let's talk about something that I call train wreck verbs. No one else in the world calls these group verbs train wreck verbs, but I do. And let me just tell you right now, they're very, very important. All right, there are 12 verbs that follow this pattern, 12 verbs that I call train wreck verbs. These are 12 of the most important verbs in Spanish. All right, and because they're 12 of the most important verbs in Spanish, and because they're used so much, they're very, very irregular. So I've come up with kind of like a little story to help you remember these, okay? I know it's going to seem weird, but hopefully this story will help you remember how to identify train wreck verbs and how to form them. All right, but before we get into the hard stuff, let's just take a little trip down memory lane and look where we've been so far. All right, look at the verb hablar in the preterite. Hablé, hablaste, habló, hablamos, hablaron. I told you there were 3 chants you had to know. I said the most important chant in Spanish too is this. Everybody, if it ends with an E, it was done by me once with an accent. If it ends with an O, it was done by Joe once with an accent. I cannot stress how important that chant is, and you'll start to see that in the next couple weeks. All right? Now that chant tells you what the yo form ends in, E. It tells you what the he form ends in, O. That chant tells you which forms of a regular AR verb take an accent, the yo form and the he form, and it tells you which letter the accent goes over, the E and the O. So again, listen one last time. If it ends with an E, it was done by me once with an accent. If it ends with an O, it was done by Joe once with an accent. Then I told you the second most important chant in Spanish is we keep our letter. This is an AR verb. So notice, A-S-T-E, A-M-O-S, A-R-O-N. And finally, I taught you a third important chant, which was te-ro. Te-ro, te-ro. Te-ro's past tense is te-ro. All right, then I taught you IR verbs. And I said, remember that second most important chant in Spanish, we keep our letter? Check it out. It's an IR verb, so it's got I, I-S-T-E, I-O, I-M-O-S, I-E-R-O-N. IR verb, I in every form. And notice, there still was an accent on the last letter of the yo form, and there still was an accent on the last letter of the he form. And notice, te-ro, te-ro, te-ro's past tense is te-ro. Now, I hope I don't blow your minds with this, but again, I'm going to start talking about train wreck verbs. There are 12 of them, and again, these are some, if not the most important verbs in Spanish, most of the most important verbs in Spanish. All right, now, let's just go through it once. I'll say it and you guys repeat it. Tuve, tuve, tuviste, tuviste, tuvo, tuvo, tuvimos, tuvimos, tuvieron, tuvieron. Now, first things first. Hold it, Mr. Holt. This has an E and an O from the AR verbs, but it has I-S-T-E, I-M-O-S, I-E-R-O-N from the IR verbs. What kind of Frankenstein verb is this? It's kind of like we've mangled AR verbs together with IR verbs. 2 of the endings come from AR, the E and the O, and 3 of the endings come from IR. Well, here's why I call it a train wreck verb. Pretend this is the AR train coming down the track. And this is the IR train coming down the track. That was kind of lame. And they smash into each other. Now, if you've ever seen movies or pictures of a train wreck verb, the trains get all mangled together. And again, we're visualizing the AR train, hablar, smashing into the IR train, and here they're mangled together. So some of these pieces come from the AR train, and some of these pieces come from the IR train. Well, that's good and fine, Mr. Holt, but how am I supposed to remember which endings come from the AR train? Remember the most important chant in Spanish, too? If it ends with an E, it was done by me. If it ends with an O, it was done by Joe. Oh, that chant tells us which AR endings are used for train wreck verbs. Yes. But Mr. Holt, what happened to the accent? There were accents here and there were accents here. After the train's wrecked, after it turned into a train wreck verb, there are no accents. Visualize this. If there were accent marks on the AR train and there were accent marks on the IR train and they smashed together, the accents wouldn't survive the accident. Everybody, the accents wouldn't survive the accident. So there are no accent marks on train wreck verbs. All right? Now, Mr. Holt, what's up with tuve, 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 tuve? Well, it's very, very irregular. Again, when trains smash together, there's tremendous amount of power and everything changes. Now, how am I going to remember that tener turns into tuve? Well, I just thought, wow, when I was little, I had a TV and you had a TV. I know that's not the best way to remember that, but tener turns into tuve, tuve, tuve. See the letters TV? You and I both had two TVs. So again, this is called a train wreck verb. Why? We take AR verbs, the regular endings for a regular air verb, and the regular endings for an IR verb, and we smash them together. And when they smash together, the yo form and the he form come from the AR train. The other three forms come from the IR train, all right? And there are no accents, okay? Tricky. But again, real important because there are 12 of these bad boys. All right, hopefully that helps you understand this group of verbs that I call train wreck verbs.